Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode here on European Confessions. The following story that you're going to be listening to, it comes from a translation of a message that I received. The translation reads like this. Hello, Brother Nashi, how are you? Can you please post my own story as hidden identity? My brother, my story, it goes on like this. As for now, I am living here in the United Kingdom. When we came here to the United Kingdom, we were quite young. But as for my eldest sister, she was already married at that time. She was the eldest one. So what happened to us, the reason as to why we are all in the United Kingdom, it is because my father, when we were still in Zim, he murdered this other prostitute, and after he had murdered that prostitute, he was then arrested. But my father could not even stay in prison for more than 1 month, since he was a wealthy man. I suspect that there was a lot of corruption that happened there, and he had these powerful lawyers that made sure that he was not going to stay in prison for a very long time. The only problem was that soon after my father had been released from jail, one day when he was busy watching TV, when we walked back into the living room, that was when we found out that he was already dead. He just had a heart attack whilst he was holding the TV remote. My brother, this story, it pains me a lot. My father, he had 2 properties in Harare. He had the family home in which we grew up staying, that was in Mount Pleasant. Then he had another property that didn't have anyone that was staying there. It was quite odd, but my father, he used to take us to that property that was in the suburbs of Avondale for his rituals. My father was a ritualist, and it pained me a lot because my father abused me when I was still a little girl. That was when he deflowered me. He deflowered me because this was part of his rituals. As a man, the rituals that he did, the covenant demanded that he had to sleep with his own kids. But what he told us is that since he came from Malawi, in their custom, this is what they do. When a woman has come of age, the father is the one who is supposed to be the first one to sleep with his own daughter. Then he can hand over his daughter to his new son-in-law. But my father, I think that he sensed that his time to die was fast approaching, so he deflowered all of us. Maybe he was trying to block the spirit of that woman that he had murdered. But this is what my father did to all of us, and it pains me a lot, and it gives me a lot of trauma. There were many times when my father would take us to his property there in Avondale. Whenever I would enter into our house, Brother Nashi, I never felt comfortable. I was always scared because I knew that this is where my father had performed his evil act on my body. I was just an innocent young woman. I wanted to resist when my father was abusing me. I wanted to fight him back, but I could not fight him back because he was much more powerful than I was. He did this to all of us one by one. And my father, he was very clever because when he was with me, he acted as if he hated the rest of my sisters. And when he was with my sisters, he acted as if he hated me. So we never told each other that this is what our father was doing to us. On the night when he took me, Brother Nashi, he said that, "Oh, my daughter, come with me because I want to go with you to the shop so that we can buy some lemon creams." I used to love eating lemon creams when I was still back home in Zim, those biscuits. We then got onto the car. When we got onto the car, it surprised me when I saw that we were now passing the shopping center. Then he drove towards Avondale. When we were in Avondale, we then went to that house that my father owned. Then when we went there, there was a security guard. He spoke a little bit with the security guard. We then entered into our house that was always well maintained. When we got into the house, that was when my father told me that we needed to perform a ritual like communicating with our ancestors. I immediately saw that this thing that was happening, it was not a holy thing that was about to happen, because there were a lot of fabrics, the ones that they use when they want to communicate with the ancestors. He was kneeling and he said that I had to do the same, but when I wanted to kneel right next to him, he said that I was not supposed to do that. I had to go and kneel while I had to go and sit cross-legged on top of this other red cloth that he had laid on the ground. So I was sitting cross-legged whilst I was facing my father. My father then started speaking with the ancestors, but as I was closing my eyes, listening to the ancestors, I then felt movements. My father was busy touching me until his hand was on my private parts. When I tried to run away, he said that I had to stop because now the spirit of his grandfather had taken possession of his body. So I was supposed to wait for the spirit to find out what the spirit wanted to do with my body. Then my father lifted me up. When my father lifted me up, that was when he started sleeping with me. I tried to fight, but I was just a little girl. When I looked at his manhood, it was so scary and it was extra big. It was the most painful thing that had entered into my body. My father, he had these other rings that were on his manhood. These rings, they were full of beads, and these rings made his manhood to be extra big. After my father had finished doing all of this evil thing to me, then he gave me some herbs, and he told me that these herbs, they were going to numb the pain. Even though the herbs, they were working, but when we got home, it was really painful. My father then gave me money, and he said that I was not supposed to tell my siblings that this is what we had done, because this thing, he said that since we are from Malawi, it is a culture that our forefathers used to practice, whereby a man sleeps with his daughter before he hands over the daughter to his new son-in-law. So I remained quiet, but I always felt that my father was just an evil man, until the news came out that my father had murdered a prostitute after he had gone late at night and he had gotten the services of a prostitute. I don't know if they had an argument or what. The next thing was that he started stabbing that prostitute on the back. Then the prostitute passed away. My father was then arrested. Later on, he was released, but already the preparations for us to leave Zim had already started. My father wanted to run away from his crime, but before we could travel to the UK, my father was arrested. After his release, he passed away. We then came here to the United Kingdom. When we came here, we forgot about everything that had happened back home. But what I started to notice, Brother Nash, was that I was the first one who would come out of school, and we didn't have a house help. Each and every time when I would return back home, I would always notice that the house will be clean as if we had a house help. But my mom, she could not even afford to have a house help at that time. Then when my mother saw that this is what was happening, my mother one day said, "My kids, what I want you to do is that let us just mess up the house. I do not want anyone to make their beds today, and I do not want anyone to clean after we have eaten breakfast." So we sat on the kitchen table, then we ate our breakfast, then we left the house. It was almost like upside down. It was like untidy, like never before. When we all returned back home at the same time, then we saw that there was one who had cleaned the house. My mom, she then made an emergency trip for this other uncle of ours. So my father's relatives, since they are from Malawi, they do follow the Muslim religion that I do not follow and do not understand. When this uncle of ours, who is a Muslim, when he came to the UK, he was always with my mom in the bedroom, and they were always having these strange prayers. Soon after that, the ghost of that woman who was murdered by my father never bothered us again until we were all grown up. Then, after my husband had passed away, Brother Nashi, a few years ago, I just wanted to move out of that town because I wanted to start afresh. The memories, whenever I would look at this house that me and my husband used to live in, it just gave me painful memories. I then moved out and I then placed the house on the market. Since that year, Brother Nashi, I have failed to get someone who is willing to purchase this house. I once had a contract with this other white family. They said that since they wanted this house, but they had never stayed in this town, they just wanted to have a feel of this suburb before they can commit to buying this house. So the contract was that they were going to rent out the property. It was fine with me. I didn't want this house to be just sitting. I wanted to earn something. So these people, when they came with their idea, I was really excited. But then they came back to me. They spoke with me and they said that the first thing that started happening to them was that their kids, they kept on complaining of having severe headaches. Then it moved on to the man and the wife. Then there was this other guy. When the white guy, he had quickly returned back from work. When the guy quickly returned back from work, he then saw that there was someone who was busy doing the dishes. He looked, Brother Nashi, and he said that he saw that this was not his wife, because this woman, she looked like a black woman. When he entered into the kitchen, to his surprise, he saw that there was blood all over the place. He saw this black woman that had a long knife that was stuck behind her back. When she turned around, then she realized that this was an evil demon that was standing right in front of him. So they just wanted to move out. I said, what about the contract? They said that we are willing to pay you part of our yearly rentals so that we can just move out. When I looked at their little babies and when I saw that they are a family that are still struggling in life, I then said, fine, you can move out. I am still trying to sell this house, but I can't. Some real estate guys that do sell properties, they have tried every trick in the book to sell this house, but it cannot be sold. This is the same thing that has been happening to our father's house that we left back home in Zim, which is in Avondale. There was a family. This family now is in the United States. They gave my mom the full amount of that was needed for the house. Then they said, even the money, you can keep it, because they were seeing the ghost of that prostitute that was murdered by my father. Usually what this spirit does is that when you start to stay at that house that my father used for his rituals, when you wake up in the morning, you will find yourself sleeping on the grass, or the spirit will lift you, including your own bed. Then when you wake up, you will see that you will be sleeping outdoors. My uncles, they know that this is what is happening, but because they are greedy, they keep on giving these people, they keep on selling this house to unsuspecting victims, knowing that those people will never stay peacefully in that house. Oh, dear listeners, right there was a narration of a message that I received. Strange things do happen in this world.